Hello and welcome. So today I'm going to be talking about seed potatoes and how to plant your own little seed potatoes so that you can grow some more of your own food. And it's suddenly really windy here, so that's kind of just bad timing, I guess. So what I do is I usually buy a package of about 10 kilograms of seed potatoes. I typically go for fingerling potatoes or Yukon Gold potatoes, as I find they're more prolific than like the russet potatoes and the Kennebec potatoes. Yeah. So what I do is I'll get like the individual potatoes from the sack. The reason why I choose seed potatoes as opposed to growing like grocery bought potatoes is simply because the varieties that they choose when they're selecting their seed potatoes tends to have more eyes, and an eye in a potato is essentially just a growing point. So I just wanted to show you here, this is a pre-sprouted potato I have. This here is the start of a Yukon Gold potato. I've had this healing in the soil in my regular garden bed for about 2 weeks. You don't necessarily have to heal them in, it's just I didn't have a place to plant them. So I finally got these 3 containers here, and I'm starting just a few little potato slips or starts per container. So the trick with potatoes and getting the largest amount of new tubers, which is like the edible part of the root that you can, is you want to mound them. Simply because this gives the plants more support, and it also provides lateral growth of roots along the main stem of the individual shoot, and that's what's going to give you multiple more potatoes. So that's why I fill my containers just usually about half to a third deep. I'm currently using a mixture of Magic Soil by President's Choice and Black Earth by President's Choice. I use the Black Earth because it's very fibrous, and I find that this coarseness of soil tends to hold drainage pretty well. It retains water, but it does drain freely, so that you make sure that the potatoes don't rot. And then I use this Magic Soil here, simply because it's more like a potting soil, and it has vermiculite and perlite, and it's a little more airy, so it allows for aeration within the roots. So when I get my potato slips, or my original potatoes, from the bags that I purchase, I'll cut them in half with a spade. So I don't know if you can see here, but I've pre-cut this in half, quite simply because there was an eye on the one side and then there were 2 eyes on this side of the potato. And when you do that, essentially what you're doing is you're separating the distance between the eyes. And when you separate the distance between the individual eyes or growing points on a potato, then that makes for more space in between the eyes to generate more potato growth between them, so they're not super close. So I just got 2 individual potato sets, like individual potato slips, seed potatoes, and then I just spread them among this like laundry bin here. And I did that about a week and a half ago, and I'm already starting to see these individual shoots starting to form. So now this here is one that I did a week before that, and as you can see, I've already mounted it to the next level. There's a bit of condensation on the side simply because I didn't put enough drainage holes right off the get-go on the bottom of the bin, but it shouldn't be detrimental to their health. It should be fine. You should still get really tasty potatoes out of this. But as you can see, even after a week, they're already starting to sprout through. So don't be afraid of completely burying your potatoes. It just adds onto those adventitious roots, which eventually gives you more tuber production, ergo more food. I don't know if you can see here too, there's just starting to sprout through. The reason why I picked these translucent bins is because you can see the root growth and kind of have a progress report of how your potatoes are doing. So this one here is rather mature because I did heal it in, but every once in a while I like to check up on my potatoes because you want to make sure that you have an abundance of root hairs on the individual fibrous roots. So I don't know if you can see there, my camera doesn't want to focus, but there's like individual little root hairs where the roots emerge from the base of the shoots or the eyes. And the more of these you have, the easier it is for the potato to consume the nutrients that you supplement it with, and therefore you'll get more potatoes. So I just loosely like to Bury them till you can barely see the shoots. In a pre-moistened growing media. This here is just the mix that I made with the magic soil and the black earth. And then you want to get a few handfuls of each growing mix and just lightly pat over top. Now I have my bins underneath a mature tulip tree, so that's why you'll see a lot of needles and stuff like that in the soil. I did that on purpose so that it deposits some natural fertilizer for me, essentially. So I'm just gonna cover it a bit more, and then you basically get a more nutritious soil, and then you just mix them. Just gradually mounding, just whenever you walk by your potato patch, just doing a little bit more every time. And then eventually in the middle of summer, your potato slips should start blooming. They have a 5-petaled white to pink flower. Typically the flowers will start off white, and as they mature they become pink, and once that happens you know that your potatoes are ready. And it's astounding how much of a bulk amount of potatoes you can get from just simply a few slips. So those are my tips on growing potatoes. You don't want to let these guys get too cold. They grow well alongside other members of the Solanaceae family, so eggplant and tomato tend to be really good things to plant next to potatoes. And the mature height of the plant, if you correctly mound it, shouldn't be above approximately 5 inches. You want the bulk of the plant to be underground, just to give way to produce that abundance of potatoes under the soil surface. The reason why I choose Yukon Gold potatoes and fingerling potatoes is I find that they take the least amount of time to really set off producing new young tubers. I find Kennebec potatoes and russet potatoes take a little bit longer. If you really love the flavor of those varieties, by all means try them out though. They're really quite delicious as well. Now one concern I know some people might have with the way I chop my potatoes in half, as you can see with this one, I just chopped it with a spade, is the callusing of the individual tuber, because it is a rather large wound that you're producing. But with seed potatoes, when you buy them, they're already somewhat crenated, they're already somewhat dry, just to get ready for you to imbibe them basically. So they're not quite particulate about that, and they'll naturally callus on their own, and they're not quite susceptible to rot if you break the tubers in half underground and then plant them. If anything, it's beneficial because, I don't know if you can see here, but on the margins of the individual tuber, you'll get more adventitious roots as well. So those are just my tips on how to grow potatoes. You can grow quite a few potatoes using this method. The mounding in a bin method is what I call it. And I hope I taught you something new. And yeah, God bless. Have a good day.